This is our examination of form and structure and how to choose the right one. It can be daunting to determine the appropriate form for a piece since there are so many, but it's a very important process. Now, it can be done by either choosing the form first, what looks interesting, and then building around it, or what's usually the case is we already have an idea in mind, a theme, a subject, or even a chord progression, and then we choose the appropriate structure around that. Now, it's very important not to compromise the idea just to work with a form that's easy to work with. And it can be likened to the skeletal system of a human body. It's around which everything else is built, so it's very important. So I have here what I refer to as a mental algorithm. It's just kind of like an idea of the questions that you might ask. Starting with, does the theme you have allow for contrasting material? So if it does, and by contrasting material we're talking about if you have a principal theme, does it allow for a subordinate theme? If it does, then you ask how large in scope is it? Now these are still fairly large in scope, but not as much as the Sonata Allegro form. So if it is large in scope, I almost always go with Sonata Allegro. If not, then I could choose a sonatina or one of the three rondo forms. Now, if it does not allow for contrasting material, then ask, does it allow for manipulation? In other words, can you take the thematic material and write variations on it and so forth? If it does, how much? So we have the small variations and the higher variation form, depending on how much manipulation it allows for. If it does not, then is it part of a larger work? So a multi-movement work? Or something like that. If it doesn't, then it's probably just going to stand on its own like a song or improvisation or something like that. If it is part of a larger work, then ask, are the other movements closely related? If they're not, then it could just be a collection or a suite. Now a suite can also be larger in scale, but usually they're not as closely related as a cycle or a multi-movement sonata. So this is just an example of how we can go about choosing a proper form or structure for a musical idea.